evening. Welcome to the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting of June 5th, 2017. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Absolutely. Mrs. Bonifield.
Present.
Mrs. Bradford.
Here.
Mrs. Frank is not here, but she'll be joining us. Mrs. Jarvis.
Here.
Mr. Johnson is not here, but will be joining us. Mr. Centers is here. President Burden.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I do thank our audience, both present and watching at home, for your patience with us. We were coming out of a previous board meeting and got here as quickly as we could. We also have two members of our board who are joining us. We do expect Mr. Johnson, as it was said momentarily, and Mrs. Frank shortly into our meeting. Mrs. Bradford, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes.
Thank you.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening and welcome very much to all of you for joining us both here and at home. If you are following along at home and you would like an agenda, they can be found on our website, which is www.livoniapublicschools.org. If you hover over the school board tab, you can drop down to agendas and follow along with us this evening. If you are present in our room this evening, agendas can be found just outside the door at the table. As you're exiting this door, if you've not picked up one, if you make it a quick right outside the door, you can get one and follow along with us this evening. This evening's meeting is a general meeting or a regular meeting or a voting meeting, depending on who you ask how their terminology goes. By that we mean that the items that are coming before the board this evening have been discussed at typically at least two other meetings. The Board of Education holds study sessions when we take basically a first glance at items that are coming up for the board to address. We also hold committee of the whole meetings, which frankly can be some of the most interesting meetings if you're looking for great detailed discussion about items that are coming before the board. I really do encourage you, if you're following either general issues or specific issues of the Board of Education, either attend or tune in to Committee of the Whole meetings. If you have missed them on a given Monday night, you can always find them in their entirety on our website. Again, on that board tab, you can drop down and you can follow along. They are videotaped in their entirety, and you can watch any meeting. Give us about a half a day. Usually by Monday evening meeting is up by about Tuesday noon or so. But if you're looking for detailed discussion, I really do encourage you to follow along with those Committee of the Whole meetings. That's where you'll have a lot of discussion. Once the board has basically asked as many questions and gotten as many answers and had as much discussion as we can think of on a topic, and we have determined that it's ready to go to a vote, it comes to tonight's meeting. So therefore, at tonight's meeting, the items that are before the board, you may not hear the level or the depth of conversation about an item. Please understand that it is not because we take these items lightly, but rather it's because we have basically beat it to death for at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 meetings before it gets to tonight. So I just wanted to give folks a little bit of a background on what to expect out of tonight's meeting. Also, This year specifically, the district has taken on our character issues as very high priorities. We have thanked our staff profusely for carrying those out and really working on empathy, grit, respect, etc. items with our students. These items can carry students through their lifetime, and they're designed to do exactly that. We would like you to know that that absolutely starts with the Board of Education, and you have our word that we will conduct our meeting with respect. We will treat each other and everybody who's in attendance this evening with respect, and we also ask that everybody who's present this evening do the same. We would love to be to carry through our belief that the adults in our community will model respect for our students every day of the week, and you have our word that it starts tonight here in this boardroom. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 3, communications, and I'm going to turn the meeting over to Mrs. Jenkins.
Thank you. Good evening, President Burton, members of
evening.
the board, Superintendent Opus. Can you hear me okay?
Nope.
It seems like, okay.
And everyone here in the room?
Okay.
No.
Doesn't sound like it's on.
Oh, yeah. I'm hearing okay, I'll speak up.
This is not on now.
Tonight, we're presenting the final installment of the LPS Student Art Gallery. For the past 5 years, we have featured student artwork on a monthly basis as a way to, one, liven up our otherwise bland board table there, or board wall behind the table. And number two, to recognize the creative achievements of our students and also the wonderful art programs in our district. Tonight, we're recognizing the artistic talents of 4 students from Frost Middle School, who were selected by art teacher Michelle Morton, who has joined us this evening. Thanks, Michelle, for being here. So these 4 students whose artwork is on the board behind you were selected out of all of the art classes at Frost Middle School, so it's quite an honor to have their works on display here in the boardroom for approximately the next month or so, well into the summer months. We'll be sure to get your art pieces back to you, though. Each student will receive a certificate. Your certificate reads Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Recognition, Student Art Gallery, Featured Artist, selected to represent the Frost Middle School Art Department at the Board of Education Office. This is signed by Superintendent Andrea Oquist and myself. Okay, and without further ado, I'd like to start off by calling our first student artist to the podium. We have Grayson Cocciolone. Oh, I was so close. Come on up.
And if I may interrupt you for just a moment, Mrs. Jenkins, if we have family members of our honorees this evening, if you'd like to get in a better position to take a photograph while your student is at the podium, please feel free to do so.
Absolutely. Here's your certificate, and if you wouldn't mind, I'll get that. Pointing out which pieces are yours.
Mine is the one on the top left and the bottom left.
Okay, and were those done with pen or?
The top one was done with crayons and permanent marker, and the one on the bottom was done with oil pastels.
Wow, very nice. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Annabella Collins, who is an 8th grader at Frost. And Annabella, I believe, had another appointment this evening, but I'm going to do a quick sweep. Okay. We will make sure that Annabella gets her certificate. Her pieces are the 2 on the far right, the fabric piece on the top and the piece directly underneath. Very nice works. Let's give Annabella a hand. We can still watch the meeting later. Next, we have Lauren Peck. Lauren Peck is an 8th grader. Lauren? Congratulations. And which pieces are yours?
The eyeball with the glasses and the piece of artwork right underneath it.
Okay. And I was wondering how you did the one on the bottom.
With oil pastel.
Oil pastel. Okay. Thank you so much. Congratulations. And finally, we have Sydney Rudy. Sydney is a 7th grader. Sydney? Last but not least, at a process of elimination, which pieces would be yours?
Mine's the second to last one, the top and bottom.
Okay, and how did you do those?
The first was with paint
Okay.
mixtures, and the second was with colored pencils and Sharpie.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. Congratulations. Okay, and that's all we have. Let's give one more round of applause for all 4 students.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from board members? For
Good
the
job.
Superintendent?
Yeah, awesome.
Outstanding.
Thank you for sharing it with us.
As we've said, there are a few artists up here, not a whole lot. Most of us are in the camp, and I definitely am I couldn't do that to save my life. So we really are admiring of your abilities, and thank you so much for sharing your beautiful work with us. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 3B, LPS Education Foundation Update. Mrs.
Okay.
Jenkins.
Thank you, President Burton. As you know, our school district is fortunate to have the support from our local businesses, civic organizations, community members, and our very own LPS Education Foundation. The work of the LPS Education Foundation is truly amazing. I know this firsthand, and I see the foundation board members' dedication to our district every day. The LPS Education Foundation is a nonprofit organization that is committed to providing financial support to our schools through programs such as the Competitive Edge College Savings Program for kindergartners and the very popular and growing in popularity Classroom Grant Program, which has recently expanded to Department Grant Program, which is key to note. Both of these programs directly benefit our students and our staff. Each year, we invite the LPS Education Foundation to offer an annual update to the Board of Education and to the community. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Diane Policelli, who serves as the president of the LPS Education Foundation, and Mr. Paul Condon, who serves as on the board as director of corporate giving. So I'd like to welcome. I believe they have some special guests to honor, so I will turn it over to them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Jenkins and President Burton. President Burton, board members, and Superintendent Oquist. Thank you for allowing me to be here this evening to give you the update on the many wonderful accomplishments of the LPS Education Foundation's program over the past year. It is my privilege to represent the foundation as president, to talk about our programs, and how proud we are to serve Livonia Public Schools. I'd like to begin by telling you the latest news about our grant program. This year, we awarded 19 grants totaling $42,000. In fact, since the program began 3 years ago, the foundation has awarded $117,000 in grants, something we are very proud of. One of the more interesting grants this year was awarded to the music department at Churchill High School. And it was used to sponsor a composer who is working with the music students and teachers to compose a unique piece that will be debuted at the opening of Churchill's Performing Arts Center. We're very excited about that. And as someone who holds music near and dear to my heart, I'm especially anxious and looking forward to that wonderful debut. Another program the foundation is proud of is its special reading program at Grant Elementary School. This is something the foundation organized in conjunction with the district and is supported by volunteers and retired LPS teachers, and it continues to be a great success since it was formed a year ago. We have also continued the Champions program, which was created last year, and each of our LPS buildings in the district has an employee who volunteers to be their building champion. They meet with the staff to provide the updates on the foundation's work, and they encourage donations from the employees, which go right back into the grant program, along with additional donations from the foundation. Our luncheon fundraiser last year was a terrific success. Our MC was Steve Courtney, who many of you know, and our keynote speaker was well-known Devin Skillion. And we had a very nice turnout at St. Mary's Banquet and Cultural Center, and the audience was thrilled with the speaker. Our back-to-school fundraiser was rained out last year, and we suffered a small financial setback from the event, but more importantly, we assured the safety of everyone by canceling the event. This year, we are well on our way in planning the weather for the upcoming event on August 22nd. And now I'm leading up to the foundation's premier program. This is the Competitive Edge College Savings Program, which now has 2,100 students enrolled in it. And for each of them, we have set up a 529 college savings account, and the foundation's endowment now has grown to $380,000, something we are very proud of. Our community partners have been very generous again this year, and it's because of them that the foundation is able to do so much more with its worthwhile programs. And with us this evening are three of our community partners, and to recognize them and thank them, I'd like to invite Paul Condon to speak. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Diane, and good evening, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here tonight to introduce to you 3 of our community partners who have contributed significantly to the foundation, and I would ask them to stand and be recognized with me at the podium, please. We are so fortunate to have with us Susan Parker Stewart, President of Livonia AM Rotary, Jake Shostak, brand leader for Team Shostak Family Restaurants, and Jeremy Cybulski, Senior Education Partnership Coordinator, it's a mouthful, representing Community Financial Credit Union. I'd like to take just a minute to give you some information on each of these valued partners. Livonia AM Rotary has been a supporter of the foundation and of our various programs since 2014, especially the grant program. Their enthusiasm is shown by the visits they have made to the classrooms that benefit from the grants that they have funded. They also include us in some of the special things that they do for our community in general, such as the recent Touch a Truck event, which was a great success at Rotary Park. We really appreciate their ongoing support over the years, so thank you, Susan, very much. The Shostak name has been a long-time, well-known name in Livonia. Recently, they became involved with the foundation, holding several fundraisers for us at their Mod Pizza and Applebee's restaurants, which were both new to Livonia. These types of partnerships and fundraisers not only help us financially, but also help to spread awareness of the foundation and the work that we do within the community. And Jake, we thank you. Oh, there he is. Jake, we thank you for joining us and supporting our efforts, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Community Financial Credit Union has been supporting the foundation since 2013. They are another valued partner that has been dedicated to help in the funding of our grant programs. They also take time out to visit the various schools and classrooms to get a real-world sense of the impact that their donations have on our children. Jeremy, thank you very much for your support and of our grant program. At this time, we would like to present each of you with a certificate of our deep appreciation for all that you do for us, and I'd like us all to recognize them with a round of applause. Thank you so very much. Appreciate it. All right, thank you so much for joining us up here today. Now I'd like to give you a bit of an update on some upcoming events. As you know, the LPS Education Foundation takes part in a variety of events throughout the year, and coming up we have Passport to Safety on June 17th, which is held at the Livonia Police Department parking lot. And we will assist the LPS School District at their table, hand out information for the district, along with some information about the foundation. Our Bounce Back to School event, always a great family event, will be held this year at Riley Upper Elementary School on Tuesday, August 22nd. We're looking forward to bounce houses, face painting, a petting zoo, food and refreshments, and of course, lively and fun music. Sources tell me, and they're very, very reliable, that we will not be rained out this year. And finally, our annual luncheon, held again this year at St. Mary's Cultural Center on Merriman Road, which is something that I think we can all agree is a much anticipated event that we all look forward to. It's planned for late October or early November, with a date yet to be finalized, but very soon. As you are aware, this event, along with the Bounce Back event, are the main sources of funding for our Competitive Edge College Savings Plan. In closing, on behalf of Diane, myself, and the entire board of directors of the LPS Education Foundation, we would like to thank you sincerely again for the opportunity to be here tonight, and more importantly, for the continued support of each and every one of you and the entire school district. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions or comments from the board or superintendent? Mrs. Jarvis?
I just want to thank the Education Foundation for the wonderful work they do in our classrooms.
Mrs. Okus?
Diane and Paul, thank you so much for your update to our valued business partners. We're so grateful for your continued support. I'm thrilled that we have crossed the threshold of over 2,000 students enrolled in the Competitive Edge program. We are one of very few districts that offer that to incoming kindergarteners, and it's sometimes hard to talk with parents of 5-year-olds about the future in college, but the fact that we have that as an opportunity for students, thanks to the work of the foundation and all volunteer board who spends countless hours each week on behalf of our district. We are so grateful for your partnership. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? For those, Mr. Johnson, go ahead.
Thank you, President Burton. I'm going to put in a plug for the Competitive Edge, because I've had the privilege of presenting that program in the past, and it is an outstanding program for the incoming kindergartners. And I don't know how much clearer I can say it for the parents that are out there that will have kindergartners coming in. This does not cost you a dime. This is all contributed to by the foundation. So please enroll your kindergartners coming in. It is an outstanding program, and as we heard today, the endowment has now gone to $380,000. It's there for your children. It doesn't cost you a dime. It's amazing that when the presentations are made, that we only get 35-40% of the parents signing up, even though they hear and they for some reason don't believe there are no strings attached. I cannot say it clearer than that. For anybody who is watching tonight, anybody who watches this meeting in the future, please enroll your students early. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? For those who may not be aware of what the grants are, we have a large number of staff in our room, so most of you are probably aware of it. But for those watching from home or who are in attendance this evening who may not be completely aware, the foundation does a lot of fundraising, as you've heard. Just a few different activities that raise some significant money. And what that is money from our community that's going back into our community. The grant program specifically is money that has been raised by our foundation members, which we are just forever grateful for. And then they open up a grant application period for our staff. And I cannot remember, the number again this year was
42 were awarded. I think there were 83 applications.
For those who didn't catch Mrs. Paliselli because she wasn't mic'd, 42 grants awarded this year, and that's money that's going back directly into the classrooms. These are ideas and plans that our staff has that we may not have funding for, but the foundation can come through and fund these various independent ideas, so staff can carry out some extra things above and beyond what our school budget covers. So what a wonderful combination of our community and our staff working together to serve our students. We thank all of our members of our staff for coming up with the fabulous ideas and going through the grant process, and we thank our members of our foundation for taking care of all the fundraising for it and putting the whole program together. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 3C, Golden Apple Award, Tara Hillary, volunteer at Cooper Upper Elementary School. Mrs. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, President Burton. The Golden Apple Award is just one of the many ways our school district recognizes individuals who go above and beyond for our students, staff, our schools, and the community. This award represents selfless dedication. It represents a positive and supportive attitude. It represents dependability, self-motivation, and true commitment to LPS. Tonight, we're thrilled to recognize a volunteer at Cooper Upper Elementary who epitomizes that definition. Our latest Golden Apple Award goes to Mrs. Tara Hillary. Tara, will you please join me at the podium? Make that long journey to the podium. Welcome. I'm going to brag about you a little bit here, if you wouldn't mind. Mrs. Hillary began volunteering at Cooper 4 years ago when her daughter, who is present here this evening, hi there, when her daughter was a student at Cooper. Her daughter is now going into 9th grade in the fall, correct? And Tara is still volunteering at Cooper. Why? Because she said Cooper is like a family. She was nominated by teachers Mrs. Erickson, Mrs. Bubar, former Cooper Media Specialist Judy Bowling, and 2 students, Evan Jenkins and Robbie Fitzgibbon, who help run the makerspace at the Cooper's LMC. And the fan club is seated right over here. Thank you all for being here tonight. Currently, Mrs. Hillary, along with her sidekicks, Evan and Robbie, Evan being my son, keeps the makerspace running smoothly to ensure students can utilize this creative space without interruption, even in the absence of its creator, Mrs. Bowling. Whether it's an iPad that a student needs for a project or a cardboard box and some glue, Mrs. Hillary is there to assist students in any way she can. 6th grader Robbie Fitzgibbon had this to say about Mrs. Hillary. She has been the most amazing, helpful, patient person ever. She inspires children in the makerspace every day, and she is just altogether great. Through the years, Mrs. Hillary has volunteered hundreds of hours in the Library Media Center, helping run the circulation desk, processing books, assisting students on the computer, and by creating fun and interesting displays in the LMC. She's been instrumental in the huge success of Cooper's Battle of the Books program by working behind the scenes and also serving in front of the scenes on the front lines as a battle coach. And I've done that job myself. It's not easy. Mrs. Hillary also helped create one of Cooper's most favored reading areas, a little nook in the LMC that makes visitors feel like they're reading a book in an outdoor Paris cafe. It's so cool. It has brick paneling, an awning, and a little cafe table. She has created courtyard displays. She is also known to run copies, do laminating, die cutting, and more for teachers throughout the school. She assists with career day and book fairs, and she even donated 6 of the popular hockey stools. Is it hockey or hokey? I'm not sure. I hear it both ways.
Hokey.
Yep, hokey. She donated 6 of those stools to the Cooper Makerspace. Wow. To quote from the nomination, Tara is selfless in all she does to help others. Her influence is sprinkled throughout Cooper, not only in the physical environment that she helped transform, but also in the hearts of all the students and staff she has encountered. Cooper Assistant Principal Christy Collier, who's also in attendance this evening, said this about Mrs. Hillary. We are extremely lucky to have her as a part of our Cooper family, and we can't thank her enough for all of the hours, money, and energy she has dedicated to Cooper. And with that, I'd like to invite Board Trustee Tammy Bonifield to join us at the podium to present Mrs. Hillary with a very special Golden Apple plaque. And on the back here, I've taped a little Golden Apple pin for you as well. Here you are.
So, and I have a couple extra words.
A few extra words
to say, and I have to say we had a presentation on the makerspace. Amazing stuff. It's very cool. Thank you. So, a couple other words that really epitomize your help at the school. Teacher Sally Erickson said she appreciates that Mrs. Hillary offers to help teachers. She did so when there was a change in her schedule, and Mrs. Hillary recognized that she might need some assistance. Teacher Mary Ann Bubar said she appreciates that she can bounce ideas with Mrs. Hillary for classroom projects. She was helpful in making creative visuals for students who were trying to reach their reading goals by making gumball machines for each student. Again, very cool.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bubar also said she always has a smile on her face and a hug if you should ever need one. Her nominations also said Mrs. Hillary is a warm-hearted, caring person who is willing to help anyone with a project or idea. And another quote from the nomination form is, Tara's friendly and positive disposition brings smiles to all those she meets. She has truly been a gift to the Cooper community and is so deserving of the Golden Apple Award because she exemplifies all that it represents. So congratulations. So good.
I'm a lot shorter than most, so hopefully you can hear me.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, though. Thank you, Superintendent Oquist, the school board members, Mrs. Jenkins, Christy Collier, and Mr. Moll, and all the other staff at Cooper. I would also like to officially thank Judy Bowling, Marianne Bubar, Sally Erickson, Robbie Fitzgibbon, and Evan Jenkins, who I think is here somewhere, for nominating me for this award. It's an amazing honor to be recognized with the Golden Apple Award, especially when you absolutely love what you're doing. The students and teachers at Cooper have become my extended family, and with that in mind, I've dedicated myself to trying to do what I can to help. The staff at Cooper has always been welcoming and supportive, and their dedication to the students is something I greatly admire. It was a huge surprise when I found out about this award. I walked into Cooper and was greeted with students and staff lining 3 hallways, clapping, and thanking me as I walked down the hall. The sincere gratitude from those familiar faces brought tears to my eyes. I am very touched that they are so appreciative of the time that they have allowed me to spend with them. I also wanted to thank my husband Ed and my daughter Elena for all their support and would help with any projects I bring home. Trust me, it wasn't just me making those gumball machines. We all had a little carpal tunnel after that one. I'm honored to receive this award and plan on continuing my dedication to Cooper and its students as long as they'll have me. Thank you.
Are there questions or comments from the board or the superintendent?
Congratulations, thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Tara exemplifies what we have seen in so many of our buildings, eventually every one of our buildings, but we have so many volunteers that help make our school district go above and beyond. And there are some that just deserve special recognition. So congratulations and thank you so much for all of your support of the school. The next item on our agenda this evening is another exciting recognition. Item 3D is recognition of LPS bus drivers. Mrs. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, President Burton. The good news continues. This item is so cool. Tonight we're recognizing our LPS bus drivers who recently took first place in the Wayne County Bus Rodeo. And we all got a kick out of the name of the event. The bus rodeo is ROADEO, rodeo. So I'd like to call the following bus drivers to the podium to receive a special certificate. Of course, we have certificates. Let's see, and they're all seated in these colorful shirts in the back row here. First up, we have Greg Dolan. Come on up, Greg. The certificates read Livonia Public Schools Certificate of Achievement, Wayne County Bus Rodeo, first place, team best score, honored by the Board of Education for outstanding achievement, signed by Superintendent Oquist and Colleen Burton, President of the Board of Education. There you are, sir. Next, we have Kim Peters. I'm just going to do a quick call out. Did Kim make it? She is coaching her daughter's softball game tonight, so we'll make sure. I think at the bus garage, you guys have to make her watch this video. Okay. Congratulations, Kim. Let's give Kim a round of applause. Next up, David Potes. Sir, congratulations. Thank you. Bob Pyle. Congratulations. And a David Pyle. Joe Menace. And Ed Yee. Congratulations. You're welcome. Okay, one more round of applause. We'd also like to congratulate Transportation Supervisor Peggy Streffen. She, for this amazing accomplishment by her staff. Peggy, will you please stand and be recognized? Thanks for coming. These drivers were among the 62 who competed in the event, which was hosted by the Wayne County Supervisors Association. The competition entailed a written test followed by a skills test through a total of 12 events that included student pickup, railroad crossing, diminishing clearance, which is driving a bus through a narrowing passage, not narrow to begin with, but continuously narrowing passage, which sounds terrifying to me. Another test was on S-turns around barrels, backing up, parallel parking, and more. I was very impressed by that as well. Parallel parking. The drivers started with a set number of points, and then would receive deductions for any infractions as they made their way through the course. Our team of skilled drivers had the best team score, which I mentioned earlier, and 3 drivers were in the top 5. So those 3 drivers are advancing onto the state competition taking place this coming Saturday, June 10th, in Mason, Michigan. I think it's Mason Middle School. Those drivers are Joe Manis, Ed Yee, and Greg Dowling. The team will take, an LPS bus out to the Lansing area. They're leaving at about 6 a.m. on Saturday, and they're willing to bring along any fans who may want to come along and cheer the team on. So anyone interested in hopping on the bus, and that is a real invitation. You may call the transportation department to reserve your seat on the bus.
Awesome.
We wish all of you the best of luck at this state competition, and thanks so much for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the superintendent or the board? Go ahead. Mrs. Bonnefield.
I just want to thank you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedules to do this on your own time. It's amazing. And I told Dan when they said what you guys were doing, I'm like, I don't park my car. I don't parallel park my car, let alone parallel parking a bus. So that's amazing. And you guys really exemplify the quality of our drivers and our transportation. And we really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Other comments or questions? Mrs. Jarvis?
I just want to thank you for transporting us to a new level. And I'm really hoping that any passengers don't have to stay on the bus during the parallel parking and the S-turns. I don't mind being a guest on the bus, but it got limits.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Burton. And above all, thank you for keeping our kids safe.
Yes.
I agree.
Mrs. Oquist?
Just a quick note, congratulations to all of you. We were so excited to have you here this evening. We were excited to get the news. And for those of you that don't know, our drivers and our transportation department safely and successfully transport over 8,000 students every day of the year.
Wow.
And we are grateful for what you do, and we wish you so much luck this Saturday. We can't wait to hear how things go. Thank you for being here with us this evening. Congratulations to our first place team.
Any other comments from the board? No. The first and potentially scariest thing that a kindergarten parent will do is put their kid on the bus. And then I was one of those parents that followed the bus. Sorry, guys. Get the little trail of the cars. But so quickly, as kindergarten parents in Livonia Public Schools, we learn who our bus drivers are, and we consistently know who our bus drivers are, and we learn how safe you keep our children and how much you also care about them personally. You are the beginning and the end of their day with LPS, and we cannot thank you enough for making it a terrific day for our kids and for a safe day for our kids. Thank you so much. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 3E, LPS Points of Pride Career Intern Program. Mrs. Jenkins.
Okay, thank you, President Burton. In keeping with our new LPS Points of Pride standing item on the agenda, which I love, in which we hear from students who are doing great things all around the district, we're excited to recognize the Livonia Public Schools Career Intern Program on its 40th anniversary this year. Before I turn it over to the students, I'd like to share some information about the Career Intern Program. And I'd like to thank the program coordinator, Mary Pat Benoit, who is with us this evening. Mary Pat, thanks for being here. And thank you for compiling the information I'm about to recite. The Career Intern Program at the Livonia Career Technical Center started as a pilot program during the 1976-77 school year with just 4 students. The first coordinator was Ernie McGinney, okay, looks like anyway, McGinney. He was with us from 1976 through 1979, followed by Dennis Lorraine, 1979 through 1983. Then there was Norm Finley, 1983 through 1998. Then Mary Coulard, 1998 through 2007, and now Mary Pat Benoit, she took over the program in 2007. The program allows college-bound high school seniors the opportunity to spend 3 to 4 hours Monday through Thursday, for 1 semester in a business or professional setting, experiencing and observing the daily responsibilities at the work site. More than 1,500 students have participated over the past 40 years in this invaluable program. Though some have scattered throughout the United States and even the world, many former interns have returned to Livonia to live and work in our community. This year, approximately 40% of our students enrolled in the program were offered jobs this year, following their internships, and approximately $2.4 million in scholarships were awarded to students in the program just this year, which is very impressive. Prior to internship placements, each candidate is required to have educator recommendations, a positive interview with an intern coordinator, and subsequent interviews with prospective intern sponsors. Interns are placed in various fields, including engineering, medicine, early childhood education, government, and law, and varied business settings, to name just a few. It's not unusual for students to be placed in areas of particular interest as well, and this is kind of neat. Including some students have interned with the Michigan Philharmonic, music therapy programs, and even one student had an internship with a helicopter company, and that student was actually taken to prom in a helicopter. During their internships, students experience the professional settings and learn many soft skills, such as making introductions, dressing for work, being a team member, being punctual, and those sorts of soft skills. Just a few of the better-known former interns of the program include our very own Superintendent Oquist, Livonia Chamber of Commerce President Dan West, and coincidentally, Program Coordinator Mary Pat Benoit is a graduate of the program herself. In fact, Mary Pat, if you could join me at the podium real quick. I have a certificate for you. I'd like to read this certificate in honor and recognition of the 40th anniversary. Livonia Public Schools, Certificate of Recognition, Career Intern Program, Livonia Career Technical Center, 40th anniversary, celebrating 40 years of success in connecting students with careers. And that's signed by Superintendent Oquist and Board President Colleen Burton. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
The program success speaks for itself, being in its 40th year. But at this time, I would like to turn it over to a few students who have personally gained from the program. So if I could have our 3 interns come join me at the podium, and you can go in whichever order you choose. Just make sure you introduce yourself and let us know which area you interned in, okay? There you are.
Hi, I'm Madison Morobater from Churchill High School, and I interned at Providence Park Pediatrics. At my internship, I spent half of my day with nurses, and my other half was with the medical assistants, both assisting them throughout their day. I observed many tests and vaccinations. However, this internship meant way more to me than just the experience. Going into this program, I wanted nothing to do with pediatrics. I was suggested to it by Miss Benoit, which I'm so thankful for that. Now leaving, I plan on going to Eastern Michigan University, majoring in nursing with a position in pediatrics in mind. This internship made me fall in love with pediatrics and children. A nurse once told me, in this field of study, you will see horrible things happen to children, but you will see just as many miracles, and that's what makes this job amazing. This spoke to me. I want to be there for people at their worst and the best. This internship ignited a passion in pediatrics that I otherwise would not have. I truly am thankful for this chance, and I'm truly thankful for this program. This program did amazing things for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay. My name's Eva Kelzer. I just graduated from Stevenson High School. My internship, I actually interned in 2 places because I was a full-year intern. I started out at a psychology practice called New Directions for Better Living, and I was fully aware that I wanted to pursue psychology, and then I decided that I didn't after being at this internship site.
It's just as valuable to know.
Yes, so already this program did a lot for me by saving me 12 plus years of paying for college in an area I didn't want to go into. So after that, I switched to humanitarian aid and nonprofit administration. So I worked at St. Edith Church, also in Livonia. I've done a lot of things over my time there. I headed up a program called Operation Christmas Child, where we pack shoeboxes with hygiene items, school supplies, and toys and send them to impoverished children overseas. I headed up a couple of blanket making drives. One we donated to U of M Cancer Hospital, and the other to Loaves and Fishes, which was distributed to homeless individuals. I coordinated a partnership with a homeless shelter in Westland, and I did a lot of marketing for my events, planning my events, coordinating volunteers, and website administration. I learned so much through my internship and through the actual class. We learned a lot about professionalism, a lot about interviewing skills. I built my own resume, and that actually helped me so much in my college search and in interviews and competitions for scholarships. So this program just meant everything to me, and it really changed my life and really helped me with my future. And I will be continuing my education at Eastern Michigan in nonprofit administration.
Terrific.
Okay, my name is Hunter Jacobs. I just graduated from Churchill High School. Obviously, you know what that is.
Yeah.
I would hope, anyways. So, beginning of this year, I heard about this. Well, I heard about this program last year, and I mean, just hearing about it, a place where you could just intern at like any place you wanted to. I mean, that sounded pretty great to me. So, from the very start, I heard about it, signed up, and interviewed, and it was pretty intimidating, but I liked it. And I got in. I wasn't too surprised when I got in, but on a real note, it was cool. And from the start, it was a lot of paperwork, a lot of trying to figure things out, like where you wanted to go, what you wanted to do. And I was going in thinking that I wanted to be an anesthesiologist, and I maybe not. But so I started off at St. Mary's, and for a semester I was there. From the first day, I was in the trauma rooms in the ER, and within the first week, I don't want to gross you guys out, but I saw some pretty cool things that other people would probably throw up at. I saw some guy come in who got in a car accident. He had his arm hanging out the window, and he got hit dead on. And, it was sad, but, I thought it was cool. And I watched a lady die 3 times, actually. We revived her twice. And I helped take her body down to the morgue. I saw people that were, drunk or on drugs come in, go into the psychotic ward. I helped, well, I didn't personally help because I wasn't really allowed to, but like I watched them get detained and put into rooms. I mean, it was just an amazing experience, and it definitely opened up my eyes to, to a whole new just field of like things that I could do. Second semester, I wanted to change just because I was stuck in the ER, which was perfectly fine, but I wanted to like experience other things. So second semester, I went to Providence and Novi, and I was in 3 different places. It's PACU, which is post-anesthetic care unit, Healing Arts, which is the cancer ward section, and then also physical therapy. I don't like physical therapy. I find it boring. I was an athlete, but I mean, I don't know. I didn't really like it. But Healing Arts, it was sad to see all the cancer patients, from anywhere from kids to adults, but it was also cool to see how they helped them and to see all the therapies that they gave them. There I did a lot of projects with coordinating, like events and helping them do, I don't know, such just projects for like knit and yarn or stuff like that to help patients feel better through their process of chemo and healing. I was offered a job there to work. I'm not going to take it because I'm going to Wayne State next year. I don't know time for that, but I'm not 100% sure yet still what I want to be, but this has definitely narrowed it down. I like trauma. I definitely want to be a doctor, and I never would have known that without going through this program. And I just think it's wonderful, and I recommend it for anyone. If you have kids, definitely it's a good idea. And this being the 40-year anniversary, I think it's awesome. And that's it. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you so much for being here, all 3 of you, and Ms. Benoit. We're very impressed by your work, and I'm sure the stories could go all evening about those programs. So,
Are there
thank
questions
you.
or comments from the board or the superintendent?
Gross.
Mrs. Bonfield.
I was wondering is it a requirement that the kids are expecting to go to college, or are there internships for trade school and potentially for kids that aren't necessarily going
You may
to
want to come back up to the mic for a moment, because
a
otherwise folks
conventional,
at home can't hear you.
what we would consider a conventional 4-year degree?
Absolutely. We have current student interns who are college bound. We also have a vocational intern program where kids are working in the manufacturing fields. When the former superintendent, Dr. Leopold, was here, he had approached me about building that, and I've been working very closely with the Chamber of Commerce and trying to get that focus going. And I'm also working very closely with Roush to get manufacturing and other different places that are really seeking help. So I'm trying to build that class a lot more for kids who are not necessarily college bound, but who could get in a trade and get paid right out of high school and have a really good career. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.
Parents appreciate that.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the board or superintendent?
Congratulations on many years of success, Mary Pat. You continue to carry on an outstanding tradition for our students. So, and thank you to our 3 students who shared their experiences. It really is a fascinating and tremendous opportunity. And I know one of our students talked about finding that it wasn't the right choice. And quite frankly, I know for many of my friends and folks who had gone through that as well, that was as important, if not more, before they head off into pursuing a college degree. So thank you for your stories and for sharing that and for your continued dedication to the program.
It's also important to note too, it falls under our LPS Points of Pride category or a section of our meeting, but that really is very true. I did not know until just a handful of years ago. I just assumed that other districts had, at least most of the larger districts had career centers, and found out that they don't. This is really rather rare in the state of Michigan. So for all the things that Livonia Public Schools offers our students, this is one of the jewels in the crown, is having a career center that serves so many different needs, so many different areas, and having the career intern program be a very vital part of that is just huge. So When you're thinking about your school district, there are a lot of things to do, a lot of avenues your students can go. But as your students approach high school, do seriously consider the Career Intern Program and the Livonia Career Center. It's terrific offerings for us. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 3F, district update from the superintendent. Mrs. Oquist.
Thank you, President Burton. I have a few updates for us this evening. So this past week, we had a very special time in our district. We had commencement ceremonies from 4 of our different schools. We started with the Western Wayne Skill Center. I think that was that a week ago? A little over a week ago. And then we had over 1,200 graduates this past weekend from Churchill, Franklin, and Stevenson. So do we have any graduates or parents of graduates in the crowd? Raise your hand.
A few.
So
Yep.
congratulations to all of you. You know, one of the neat things, I don't know how many of you have seen this on social media and some of the things that folks have shared, but prior to those commencements and oftentimes after the commencement practice, many of our graduates have gone back to their home elementary schools. So I don't know if some of you here had the opportunity to see that, but many of them have gone back to take pictures in front of their elementary schools or to parade through the halls of the school in their caps and gowns. And it's such a pleasure to see our graduates circle back to where they started. So thank you to all who took the time to do that. Speaking of where you started, Kindergarten Roundup took place last week, so that is always a really important day in our K-4 schools. I believe it was Wednesday and Thursday, is that correct? Wednesday and Thursday of last week, we hosted Kindergarten Roundup at all of our K-4 schools. We had a tremendous turnout, and we are thrilled to be welcoming at least about 750 new kindergarten faces to our schools this year. So that will be terrific. Congratulations to many of our spring athletes. Our season has concluded for a number of them. We had a number of our athletes participating in district and state contests over the weekend. And I know we have at least a couple of teams. I hope I've gotten all of them. But I know both Franklin and Stevenson baseball teams won their respective district titles and will be moving on this Saturday along with the bus rodeo champions going to a championship. Both Franklin and Stevenson will be playing in their respective district championships for the regional title. And so we wish those teams, all of the players, coaches, and parents much luck. We wanted to once again, as we start to bring a close to the school year, acknowledge all of the efforts from our transition teams, specifically at Cass and Garfield, who are closing, and then all of the receiving schools have worked so hard to bring those school communities together. There's a lot happening in the next 10 days. I would assume that most of the staff here would agree that there's still lots to be done. But our last day of school is June 16th, and so we won't have another official meeting before that time, and we always want to wish our families a safe and fun-filled summer recess. Paul, you mentioned the Passport to Safety event. That will be taking place the day after, so if you're looking for something to do immediately upon the close of school, June 17th across the way at the Livonia Police Fire Headquarters, we will have the annual City's Passport to Safety. Livonia Public Schools will be participating. We would love to see our families join us there as well.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to take a brief break, as has been the custom of this Board of Education, so that we can we'll take a recess of about 5 to 10 minutes, so that those present this evening can come over and congratulate the honorees of the evening. So we are at recess, and please do take advantage of giving these folks a very well-deserved pat on the back. Welcome to the continuation of the Livonia Public Schools Board of Education regular meeting of June 5th, 2017. We are continuing our meeting and are at the point of 3G in our agenda this evening, which is written communications. I do not have any written communications. Does any other board member have written communications to share at this time? Seeing none, the next item on our agenda this evening is item 3H, audience communications. Audience communications, if you're not familiar with it, is a period of time that the board sets aside to listen to members of our community. It is very definitely a time for us to listen as opposed to a question and answer type session. We do have board policy that each speaker is allowed 3 minutes, and we do ask that you would honor that 3-minute time period. The reason for that is so that we can be fair to everybody and that everyone can have a turn to be heard, in addition to the regular business of the board that's taking place that evening. Mr. Johnson has volunteered for quite some time now to be our timekeeper. So if you do hear a beep go off, you'll know that you've hit your 3 minutes, and if you could conclude your comments at that time, it would be appreciated. We've gone to a timer because we found that's a little bit more polite than interrupting a speaker. So if you hear that, that's what that is for. If you could also state your name and address if you are participating in audience communications, that would be appreciated. We have a number of folks who wish to speak this evening. The first is Ryan Tracy. Mr. Tracy. Good evening.
Superintendent Oquist, President Burton, and members of the board. My name is Ryan Tracy. The address is 31221 Hathaway, Livonia, Michigan, 48150. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to speak in the open forum and for the chance to address you and the community for the third time in the last year. I want to address one major issue today, and that is insurance with the employees of Livonia Public Schools. After Mr. Winnery left the district, our LEA bargaining team, who is here tonight, expressed hope and a very positive outlook for the upcoming negotiations. However, as the weeks have passed, we were told that the team and the district were making very little to no headway on the financial side of our issues. So as you look around and see the room full of LEA members, we wanted to remind the district that this is a huge concern for all of the employees here at Livonia Public Schools. The amount of insurance that our LPS employees pay is significantly higher than many comparable districts. When our state changed the insurance law a few years ago, districts were given two options. Option one was that they could go to an 80-20 plan, where the district covered 20% and the employee would cover the other 20%. Livonia did not do that. Also, the state set a hard cap for districts at $16,751.23. This is the most that any district can pay for a family insurance plan. I'm focusing on the family insurance plan because I know a lot of my colleagues and myself, this is the plan that we use here. But as you look at Wayne Westland, Milford, Howell, Northville, Novi, Heartland, Brighton, South Lyon, and many other districts around us have chosen to pay this hard cap. These districts also use the exact same insurance plan as LPS does. Livonia pays $12,207.80. That's only 72% of the potential hard cap. That leaves the other 28% to be funded by the employee. An LPS employee with a family pays $5,650 a year. This does not include the $2,600 HSA that we are now required to fund as well. So an LPS employee now pays $8,250 a year for insurance for a family. This number will be a lot more palatable if Livonia progressed with the step system outlined in our contract. However, this is not the case. The contract can be found on the Livonia Public Schools website for those of you at home. On page 105, it shows what a new hiree can expect to earn as an LPS teacher. Unfortunately, the schedule is a pipe dream. I've been here 11 years, and I'm only halfway to the top of this scale. I have people in my building who have been in the district 7 years with a master's degree, and they are on step 2. When you ask your employees to work for $10,000 to $15,000 less than what they were hoping for when they entered the profession, and then ask them to contribute an extra 28% to their insurance from their already meager salary, it breeds resentment and mistrust. It's not fair, it's not right, and we need to make a change. Thank you.
tonight is Claudia Rushlow. Our next speaker tonight is Claudia Rushlow.
Good evening, President Burton, members of the school board. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Claudia Rushlow. I have been a resident of Livonia, 19620 Parker Street, since November of '96. I have had, and currently still have, children in this school system. I have volunteered with St. Cloud Parish for 16 years, volunteered for the LJL for 14 years, and 16 years in this community doing prevention work. I am currently a special ed provider for Franklin High School. On Tuesday, December 13th, a student shared with me that he had received a letter from court informing him that he was being charged with truancy from last year. He was beside himself with anxiety, fear, anger. The student had been making great strides this year in his academic achievement and his attendance, and was heading in a positive direction up to this point. I reminded him of his achievements and how hard he's been working. I spoke to him about detachment and letting go of this, and that everything was going to work out and everything's going to be okay. I phoned his parent that day, sharing with her what had occurred and how anxious that he was feeling, and that I would do my best to keep him calm and on track. The parent also then shared with me during that discussion that her son has been struggled with high anxiety and other issues his whole life. And in the past year, he had been hospitalized 3 times. And that she was concerned with his IEP meeting coming up that how he would react given this situation. 3 days later, on Friday, the parent requested that our assistant principal not attend his IEP meeting that was scheduled for when we returned from break, as she was concerned that that would escalate the student's anxiety. I communicated this to administration, but explained to the parent that Mr. DePonio, who was the assistant principal at the time, was part of the IEP team and that he would most likely be present. I did not hear any further regarding the truancy case. On Tuesday, January 3rd, at 11:39 p.m., I received a text message from this parent apologizing for the late contact, but if I could attend her son's hearing the next day to assist her with his anxiety. My reply was, at that time, if you need me, I can. I just need to know the time and the place. And, which she forwarded that on, at that time I had no idea who would be present aside from her and her son. Upon my arrival, I was informed that this truancy case was dismissed and that they were just waiting for the formality of that hearing. And present at the time was the parent, the student's therapist, and attorney. Although the student knew that his case was dismissed and was excited about that, he was still anxious about having to be in front of the judge. So I ended up staying.
Mrs. Rushlow, you have hit your 3 minutes. If you could make your concluding comments, I would appreciate it. Thank
All right.
you.
I didn't represent school. I was only merely there for moral support of the student, to foster a sense of community, to improve his academic experience. And of the month following, I received a letter of reprimand for doing this. I don't understand how supporting a student, providing moral support, and if I had offended or hurt someone's feelings, my intention was not to undermine the school or the assistant principal in his efforts, and but rather to, again, improve the student's academic experience. The letter that was filed is inaccurate, questions my intelligence and integrity, and is disheartening. My goal is to have
I do have to ask you to conclude your comments, please.
Yep. All right, my goal is just to have the letter of reprimand removed from my file.
Thank you. speaker is Angela Montroy. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm the mother of Dylan Montroy, that Claudia is his TC at Franklin High School. I live at 32517 Joy Road. And I'm truly just appalled that she would even get a letter like this. I've known Claudia since our kids were little. So my son knows Claudia outside of the school. And during this past year, if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have the success that he does today. He's on 2/3 of the medications he was on. He's advocating for himself. And she's done wonderful things that couldn't be done in the 9th grade from Mr. DePonio that was, giving him a hard time, kind of bullying him, wrote him up for truancy, and didn't even mention that he got the letters from the doctors, if he had looked through the proper file, the truancy would have never been written. He said he didn't have any doctor's notes. Well, they were all there. I made copies and made sure that they were put in his office. But going back to Claudia, if it wasn't for her advocating for him, we wouldn't even be where we are today, with his progress. And I think that, her being reprimanded for showing up for a friend, she was honest. She told him, yeah, I know, I was there. She was there for moral support. At no time did she ever say that she was with Livonia Public Schools or anything. By the time she got there, we were done. So she was strictly there for moral support. And it was because my son had asked her to come. That's it.
Okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is Eric Longuski. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you? President Burton, members of the board, Dr. Oquist. Thank you for having me here today. My name is Eric Longuski. I'm a Michigan Education Association Executive Director, 5030 White Pine Drive from China, Michigan. You may know where that's at. May not. I'm speaking to you today on behalf of Claudia Rushlow, a teacher at Livonia Public Schools. As you have already heard, Claudia received a letter of reprimand that I would like the school board of Livonia Public Schools to ask the superintendent of schools to remove from her personnel file. Why am I asking you to do this? Well, I will explain. You see, in 2011, the state legislature stripped the teachers of Michigan of many protections and collectively bargained rights. An objection to a letter of this nature placed in a teacher's personnel file is no longer a subject that can be taken to binding arbitration, which was the pathway that the contract would specify you would take such an issue. Even though in the contract it clearly states that the district has agreed not to do this very thing. Article 7, Teachers' Rights and Protection, it states, under Personnel Files, Section D, any records or charges or proceedings that are conducted by the district regarding a teacher that are found to be without merit, which is what I believe this is, will not become part of the teacher's personnel file. While binding arbitration to correct a wrong is not allowed, what can be done is for an individual to approach the Board of Education and ask them, which I am doing now, to act on matters that involve discipline and other topics. The protection of an employee's right to do this is so paramount that an individual may legally request a closed session of the board to discuss this matter in private if they so desired. I think that the preceding speakers clearly outlined the intent of Claudia's actions. They were in keeping with the vision of Livonia Public Schools to create a positive learning environment both within and outside of our buildings. The theme of positive interaction between home, school, and the community resonates through your board policies. I guess, though, I could put it another way. If Claudia had approached John DePonio and asked permission if she could attend this hearing, and he forbid her from doing so, from attending this hearing, what would be the result? Is it possible for an assistant principal of a public school to deny an individual their First Amendment right under the United States Constitution, which includes the right to free speech and the right to assemble? I do not think that gives him that power. Not by any small coincidence, that very same amendment gives me the ability to be where I am at right now. And it says that I may petition for governmental redress of grievances, which is what I'm trying to do now. That goes through federal courts, state courts, and our local jurisdictions. Therefore, I would like to request that the entire school board, carefully consider this case of inappropriate discipline and apply a level of fairness that is expected by all the employees of the Livonia Public Schools. Please correct the error in judgment of one of your employees by removing this letter from Claudia Rushlow's personnel file. We would greatly appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Rebecca Barnes. Good evening.
Good evening, Superintendent Olquist and members of the board and everyone else. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm Rebecca Barnes. I reside at 2012 Washtenaw, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've been teaching at Livonia Churchill for 21 years now, and I have some concerns. Several months ago, the Livonia teachers were called together for an after-school staff meeting, and I believe this occurred in all buildings. And at the meeting, the importance of the enhancement millage was explained. We were encouraged to advocate for the millage in Wayne County. We did so, and as you all know, it passed, which is great for the school district. As explained to us, the millage would attract and retain good teachers. I'm here to request that the board fulfill its promise to its employees as well as the community. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Craig Barker. Is Mr. Barker no longer in the building? No. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you. Good evening.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board, Cabinet. My name is Craig Barker, and while I now reside at 1290 North Street in Milan, Michigan, I am a Livonia native, an LEA member, the son of an LPS employee, the brother of an LPS employee, an LPS alumnus, and next week I'll be finishing up my 16th year of teaching at Stevenson High School. I want to speak to the board and the greater Livonia and Westland communities tonight about where we stand as another school year comes to an end. When I began teaching in LPS in 2001, I knew that there would be down years. History tells us that fortunes cannot perpetually be on an upward climb. What I did not expect was that over the course of that nearly decade and a half, it would feel like that each year was more challenging than the last. While we may finally be peeking through to a much improved budgetary situation, the loss of elements of local control and frequent budgetary cutbacks in the recent past from Lansing have made it far too difficult to see better days. We see this in so many subtle ways. We see this in how few young teachers we retain in our district, potential innovators who can reinvigorate a staff with their perspective, energy, and enthusiasm. Instead, these young teachers, if they do stay, are working additional jobs to help make ends meet, which sap their internal well springs and their time to put into the classroom. We see it in the number of teachers who have spent years frozen on the steps of the pay scale, as Mr. Tracy mentioned earlier, in some cases reaching longevity before they reach the top of the steps, myself included. We see this in how few coaches we have in the district who are also LPS teachers, something the district long prided itself upon, knowing that successful mentors in the classroom could also be successful leaders of our student athletes and help build a greater sense of community. But perhaps most tellingly, as you've heard time and again in these communications, we see it in the low morale among the staff in our buildings, a pervasive feeling that while there has been more and more added to our collective plates, simultaneously there is less and less in terms of real dollars to be brought home on payday every other week. As the district likes to remind people so often, we are part of one team, one community with character. A few years back, LPS stated that one of its collective commitments was that as an exemplary school district, we operate on the premise that a school district can be only as good as the people it employs. Therefore, we have a deep commitment to holding to the highest standards for ourselves and others and providing the opportunity to learn and grow. It is time once more for LPS to live up to that collective commitment to all of its stakeholders. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Anna McGuire. Our next speaker is Anna McGuire. Is Ms. McGuire still in the building? Oh, sorry. Good evening.
Good evening, President Burton, Superintendent Oquist, School Board. My name is Ann McGuire, 29628 Munger Street. As a resident of Livonia, and I am the librarian at Emerson Middle School. The last time I spoke to this body was in 2013 when I received a Golden Apple Award. I love the work I do, and I care about our students and staff members as I support learning both at Emerson Middle School and at our district as a highly effective teacher librarian. I am just finishing my 7th year in this district after previously working as a school librarian in Northville. I started at Livonia Public Schools below step 0 on the pay scale. I am now, after 7 years, on step 1.5. On top of this, insurance costs have continued to grow. As LPS teachers, our insurance costs us more personally than other districts in Wayne County because LPS uses, as was mentioned, neither the hard cap nor the 80-20 formula provided by the state. So we employees take more of the burden. Recently, my nephew, with an undergraduate degree, was talking about job possibilities. One offer, he commented, just didn't pay enough. I asked him what that pay was and then had to wince because it's just about the amount I am now being paid. I have a master's and have worked here 7 years and make what my nephew considers an unacceptably low beginning salary. I can't tell you how many times I have heard colleagues and friends tell me that if they were me, they would find another job. And it's more tempting every year. I've stayed because I love what I do, and I believed that my compensation would get better, but it hasn't. And if things remain as they have, I will reach longevity well before I ever see the middle, let alone the top of the pay scale. I pay my bills responsibly, and I live within my means. I pay towards my health care. I put as much money as I can, not enough, towards retirement. My only outstanding debt is my car payment. And the only way I can afford living on this salary is that I live with my parents. But I worry about my future. My budget is very tight, even taking on other evening, weekend, and summer jobs. I believe strongly in the education we in Livonia Public Schools provide. I love my job at Emerson, and I want to continue my career here. But when colleagues tell me that they would go elsewhere, when my nephew with less education and less experience earns more than me, and when I've heard that new librarians hiring into LPS could possibly be hired at a higher step than me because the positions are now hard to fill, it's getting increasingly difficult to stay. And so I ask the district, as they meet with the LEA for bargaining, to consider not only steps but also reinstating some of our missteps. And I ask the district to keep me and other staff members in similar circumstances in mind. Thank you.
Our agenda this evening is response to audience communications, item 3I. I do not have any response to audience communications, prior audience communications at this time. Is there any other? All right. The next item on our agenda is item 4, consent agenda. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the following consent agenda items as recommended by the superintendent. 5A, minutes of the special meeting of May 15th, 2017. 5B, minutes of the regular meeting of May 15th, 2017. 5C, minutes of the closed session of May 15th, 2017.
Support. We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Are there any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Senders, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Senders says yes. President Burden.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item on our, oh, I'm sorry, can folks please pass down their closed session minutes? I did. There we go. The next item on our agenda is item 6, instruction matters, and 6A is approval to purchase geometry textbooks.
President Burton.
May I have the motion, Mrs. Frank?
Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District purchase the textbook Envision Geometry 2018 for secondary geometry courses from Pearson Education, Inc. at a total cost of $120,635.17.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis, and we will be hearing from Mrs. O'Brien on this item. Mrs.
Good
O'Brien.
evening. Good evening. Yes, I would like to bring the recommendation to purchase our high school geometry textbooks. And like Mrs. Frank said, the publisher is Pearson Publishing, and the book is called Envision, and I have a couple of copies right here. I just want to share a little bit with you. This adoption has come out of the same committee that worked to bring us our Algebra 1 adoption. So our high school and our middle school algebra teachers worked together to review materials, and they agreed that the best situation would be if they could find a series to adopt. But in doing that, they broke into the two groups, Algebra 1 and Geometry, and looked at what they wanted. So if they could find a series that flowed from the two books, then they would go with that. If not, then they would ask for two different books. So they separated into two groups, did their need assessment, like is regulated under administrative policies, and they reviewed and aligned our standards to the textbooks, and they developed a list of ideal materials that would not only challenge students, but then support our teachers with those challenging problems with the students. Their rubric had three main categories: focus and coherence, rigor and balance, and instructional support. And so what I'm bringing to you is a textbook adoption with a 7-year electronic textbook that goes along with the textbook in print, the teacher resources, and a consumable that this program provides for students for the next 7 years. I'm asking that we adopt this. It is a total cost of $120,605.17, and these funds would come from the district textbook adoption budget.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the board or the superintendent? No? Mrs. O'Brien, I'm going to ask the question that I ask every time so that the public is aware. It is my understanding that if we purchase, as with almost every textbook situation that we're faced with right now, if we purchase the print textbook, we get the online version for free. If we purchase the online version, we get the print textbook for free.
That is correct. So there is no savings to do one or the other.
Okay, alrighty. And also, I just wanted to confirm that the consumables that the students will be using, this cost that we're approving right now does include the 7 years' worth of consumables.
Right, so they are part of the package for the first 7 years. And typically, high school textbooks don't always come with the consumables, so then we would look after 7 years and see whether it's something we would want to continue, or we feel, our teachers feel that they have created things that support the book themselves.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the board? Thank you, Mrs. O'Brien. We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. And Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden?
Yes. We have, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 7, business matters, and 7A is approval of hard construction for summer 2017 bond work. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation from the owner's representative, Plant Moran Cressa, and approve construction costs totaling $305,888 for summer work at Garfield Elementary, Randolph Elementary, Buchanan Elementary, and Cooper Upper Elementary, and authorize the superintendent or her designee to approve the detailed work via change orders to the existing contracts with the district, pending final review and approval of terms by the district's legal counsel.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mr. Centers. And Mr. Francis, would you address this item for the board?
Sure, good evening.
Good evening.
So the recommended contractors for the summer
and fall bond construction projects will provide the work oversight and the management and the actual work needed to complete the renovations prior to the beginning of the school year. So we're breaking out summer from fall. We've discussed multiple times that the singular scope of Churchill High School is not included in this discussion. We were coming to some other buildings with regard to setting that up to get them ready for some of the buildings with regard to the building closures at the K-4 level and added students coming in. Additionally, there were a couple of buildings, Cooper and Frost, that we wanted to get back into. They were done in the first phase, and we were a little bit conservative when we were in that first phase, trying to make sure that we didn't go beyond our budget at the time. So there's a few items we're going to go back in at those buildings. So long story short, what we're looking at today on your vote is for a partial on summer only. So to be clear, we have a $1.25 million budget, again, outside of the bounds of Churchill, but a $1.25 million budget for the other multiple buildings that we are going to do smaller projects at, anywhere from as little as simply adding lockers, such as at Buchanan, because there's more students that are going to be there, up to doing some other construction projects to get a building like Buchanan set up for additional students. So Randolph, my apologies, I said Buchanan. So what we're looking at again is a partial order, and as we spoke about at the committee of the whole meeting, as we get a bundle of more bids from our currently contracted contractors, and I know that sounds odd to say, but our currently contracted contractors, we will bring more of them in as well.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the superintendent or board members? Again, we are now at the beginning of many items that we've had a lot of discussion on. So if you see a lack of a lot of questions, it's because we've discussed these at great length in the past. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bonnefield.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
President Burden.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 7B, approval to purchase cafeteria tables from 2000, this reads on my cap sheet 2013 bond. Sorry, we're looking at a lot of dates here. Let me state that again. Approval to purchase cafeteria tables 2013 bond. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the purchase of 290 portable cafeteria tables and 12 replacement stools from School Specialty, Plymouth, Michigan, in the amount of $324,743.48.
Support.
A lot of support. Yes, it was stereo. We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by a chorus, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Francis, would you please address this item with the board?
Sure, thank you. We are purchasing replacement cafeteria tables for the 3 high schools, the 3 middle schools, the 3 upper elementary schools, as well as a handful of tables that are at some of our K4s that are the bench style that do not come out of the wall as the vast majority in our K4s. That's what we have in our cafeteria. So these are replacements due to the age and condition of our current cafeteria tables. And the bid that you have in front of you came from the NJPA bid pricing, and they actually discounted that as well on top of it. So right now, we're looking at full replacements from grades 5 through 12, except at Franklin, because we're doing half of Franklin. They currently have their south cafeteria with similar tables that we are purchasing at that high school. And we've also discussed with each building the quantities they may need, a couple additional stock items, as well as some additional stools for replacement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there questions from the superintendent or board members? Mr. Centers.
Mr. Francis, is this part of the original scope of the bond, and is it within budget?
Yes. Yes, to both. We had an estimated budget, and yes, it is within that, and it was in the original scope too. This is along the lines of, we're replacing classroom furniture, desks, tables, chairs, and into the cafeteria now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Mr. Francis, I just wanted to thank you again. I know we had a longer discussion about this, but regarding the research that always goes into this and the time that's been taken to really make sure that this is going to be a great solution for our district. I know some of us voiced a concern that lunch is very stressful sometimes for our students, and that this is going to hopefully take care, be appropriate for most or all of our students, the best that we can do for them.
Absolutely. It was actually a team effort. I don't want to take credit for anything being done single-handedly. Mr. Archibald, Mr. Lau, all the buildings, including the principals, at the high schools, the assistant principals in the business office, as well as the building supervisors, were all involved with these discussions and these decisions.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Mr. Francis, what's the timing on these? Will these all be in by the fall?
That would be as long as there's no problem with the delivery. That's the plan, because we do have the summer to get them in. After the board, if you do end up voting for them, we'll be putting on a PO this week, and that gives us the summer to get them in. So that is the plan.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield.
Yes?
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
President Burden.
Yes, motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 7C, approval of bid results for waste removal. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Bradford.
Hold on.
It's been a long night already.
I got it, I think. Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the recommendation to authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contract for district-wide waste removal services with Detroit Disposal and Recycling, Detroit, Michigan, based upon the bid response for an estimated annual total of $50,000 for regularly scheduled waste pickups, plus hauling and per-ton disposal costs for roll-offs as requested by the district on an as-needed basis.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers. Mrs. Oquist, would you address this for the board, please?
I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Our contract with our current waste removal company will be expiring on June 30th of this year. So our team went out to bid for a new agreement. Our current contractor did not rebid, but we did receive 3 bids, 3 proposals, as we reviewed in depth at our committee of the whole meeting. The bids cover the 6, 8, and 10-yard regular waste pickup, as well as a cost for any off-schedule pickups as requested by the district. We also received, as you'll see on your bid tabulation sheet attached, 20, 30, and 40-yard roll-offs or haulaways, which are used for larger disposals such as those from some of our construction sites. We are recommending Detroit Disposal and Recycling as the lowest responsible bidder. We are recommending a 1-year contract with an option for 2 additional 1-year contracts. Because this will be a company with whom we have not worked previously, we would like the opportunity to take this year to allow us to evaluate the service provided to us by Detroit Disposal and Recycling. With 60 days' notice, we would be able to discontinue our agreement and go out to bid again next spring if we felt that was necessary, or we would have the option of continuing on with 1-year contracts for a period of an additional 2 years. So we would recommend approval of this, of the bid results listed in the attachment.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from the board? Mr. Centers.
So this is a new company. I know the organizers of the company have had experience in this field. We've received proper assurances that they can handle the workload of Livonia Public Schools.
We have. They've previously been in the waste management business, have been out for a short period of time and have reconfigured their company into the Detroit Disposal and Recycling Company. They have assured us that they will be growing, but not growing at a rate that would not allow them to manage the expectations within Livonia. But again, we will be monitoring that closely over the course of the next year.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments? Mrs. Bonnefield?
Mrs. Oquist, this is a service contract, correct?
It is.
And are we required to bring this to the Board of Education?
We are not, nor are we required to have a formal bid process, but we do that as an additional measure of transparency and certainly being judicious and good stewards of our resources for the board.
Thank you so much for taking the extra effort.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
President Burden?
Yes. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 7D, approval of bid results for door and door frame replacements. May I have a motion, please?
President Burden?
Mr. Centers?
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the purchase of exterior doors and frames from Ray Haven Group, Livonia, Michigan, in the amount of $55,395.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mr. Francis?
Yes, this is a sinking fund proposed purchase for doors and/or frames. We have exterior doors and frames that are, frames that are failing in some of our buildings. So we want to, they're corroded, salt, weathering, age has making them malfunction in regards to letting in water, et cetera. So what we have from Ray Haven is a bid at $55,395 to replace either a failing frame, and if the door is in good shape, they will put the door back on, or a failing door, or both, and labor is included in this cost.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there questions or comments from the superintendent or the board? Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, President Burton. And just to confirm, this is a sinking fund project,
Yes, sir.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
And for those members, or for those community members who may be watching, sinking fund projects sinking fund dollars are dollars that have been approved by the voters and that can only be used for significant repairs on our buildings, such as replacement of doors, roofs, boilers, that kind of thing. It cannot be used as general fund dollars. Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing that, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
President Burden?
Yes. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 7E, approval to renew Microsoft EES licensing. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Jarvis?
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve the renewal of the Microsoft Enrollment for Education Solution, EES, licensing from CDWG and enter into a 3-year contract. Also move that the board authorize the superintendent or her designee to negotiate and execute final contract with the recommended vendor. The annual subscription cost is $93,619.77 for 14 months, May 2017 through June 2018. And in years 2 and 3, the annual amount is $80,243.27, for a total amount of $254,106.31.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Francis?
The EES licensing is something that we are going to be using our 22I Technology Readiness Infrastructure Grant, more commonly known as TRIG, money to be supporting. We have Microsoft software operating system, so it's not just the Office system, but all of the operating system that goes around it. This will keep us up to date. So as opposed in past years, years ago, we used to actually purchase an operating system, or we would purchase the software like the Office suite. But then after a couple of years, of course, Microsoft would come out with updates and fixes and a whole new version. In this case, we would continually be getting the updated systems as they come out. We have two prices that we set forth for the board. One is a 14-month renewal, simply in order to get the district on the same, or I should say the contract on the same calendar as the district. So it was simply prorated out. There's no upcharge for that. It's just prorated for the 2 months. So you have in front of you a recommendation for the next 3 years, locked-in pricing with the quotes to follow in your packet.
Are there questions or comments from the board? Mr. Centers?
Mr. Francis, there will be an option for families to purchase the software for their homes.
I'm glad you brought that up, yeah.
Go ahead.
Just wait, there's more. Yes, families, both employees and families, as in the past, this is something that's been ongoing with the EES licensing. Employees as well as families and students can purchase the Microsoft Office suite at a vastly discounted rate through this system, because LPS will have the license with them, the licensing agreement.
It's great, thank you.
And this is actually a slight discount from what we've had the past 3 years, because they license us on a cost based upon our overall size. And as you know, we've actually slightly gone down over the past few years with number of overall employees, and we don't count every single employee. It's the employees that would use a desktop computer most often and frequently and regularly. So the number went down a little bit, so our cost actually went down a little bit.
Other questions and comments? Mr. Francis, if any families or employees wanted to utilize that opportunity, how would they go about doing so?
They could contact the district's IT department, and we can get them the information. Several years back when this first started, I know I had purchased it myself. It's actually a simple process online that you just purchase online. So we can help them with that if they call the district.
Okay. And the main district numbering, it's all over our website, but it's 734-744-2500.
Correct.
Ask
And
for
ask for
IT,
the
and
IT.
I'll get you to the right place. Thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Bradford?
How soon would that be put into place? Otherwise, people may call.
It's ongoing, because it's been in effect for several years.
Okay, so they could call
We're
right
currently, yes, we're
now.
currently under contract with them. This is what we use now, the EES license. This is just a renewal to continue going.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Nope. All righty, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden?
Yes, motion passes. We have, the next item on our agenda is item 7F, approval to renew district web hosting services. May I have a motion, please?
President Burden,
Mrs. Frank?
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District approve a 2-year contract renewal with West Interactive Service Corporation, the parent company of School Messenger, for web hosting and content management in the amount of $29,674.30 per year, for a total of $59,348.60.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Francis?
Yes, one more time. The original 3-year contract that we have for web hosting and content management with West Interactive Service Corporation, more commonly known to folks around here as School Messenger. It's the parent company of School Messenger. It's expired. We need to renew it, and we had on our original contract with West an option for an additional 2 years. We are asking to follow through on that option. You do have a quote from West for year 1 and 2, which the pricing holds steady at $29,674.30. In the meantime, we have discussed in the IT department and communications department to begin the process of looking at other content providers and hosting providers to see if there are other companies that may have features that are better suited for Livonia Public Schools. It's a long process to do that, not only search, vet, understand, but then also train. So our recommendation is to renew for the 2 years, and we will begin the search. And that's not to count out West and School Messenger. It's just an overall searching again.
Which we do with many of our vendors.
Correct.
On a rather an ongoing basis.
Correct.
Okay, are there questions or comments from the superintendent or the board? Yes, Mrs. Frank?
Real quick. Mrs. Jenkins is involved in this process if we do go with a new one, correct? The communications department will be involved in the process of selecting a new vendor when the time comes, as you guys search for it, correct?
Yes. It would be communications and IT working collaboratively.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mrs. Bradford. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden?
Yes. The motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 8, personnel matters. 8A is resignation, and this, we do not need a motion for that. That is for information purposes only. Item 8B is retirements. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Bonnefield.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District adopt the attached resolutions of appreciation for the services rendered by Lisa Colucci, Diane Kukan, May Young Ogletree, Walter Rezer, Esther Sinobaria, and Stephanie Shapaniak.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. McDonald, would you like to address this for us?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
Tonight, we bring before you 6 employees who will be retiring soon. As these employees leave the Livonia Public Schools, they'll be taking with them 104.9 years of experience. On behalf of the administration, I would like to thank these employees for their dedicated years of service that they have provided the students of Livonia Public Schools. And I ask that the board adopts the attached resolutions of appreciation for these retirees.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from the board?
Just thank you.
Congratulations and thank you.
Absolutely.
Best wishes. Absolutely. Congratulations, best wishes. We're a little jealous. We have a motion by Mrs. Bonnefield, supported by Mr. Centers. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
President Burden?
Yes. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 8C, leaves of absence. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mrs. Bradford.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the request for a leave of absence as listed below. Michelle Chaffin, September 28th, 2017. Dana Paluk, 2017-2018 school year. Karen Young, September 1st, 2017.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mr. McDonald, would you like to
Thank you.
address this one?
You have before you the names of employees requesting a leave for the 2017-2018 school year. This request is in accordance with the collective bargaining agreements of each of those employees' bargaining units.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Bradford, supported by Mrs. Bonnefield. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden?
Yes. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda is item 8D, notice of discontinuance of teaching contracts. May I have a motion, please?
President Burden,
Mr. Centers.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent that the teachers, as listed, be laid off for the school year 2017-2018, and that their teaching contracts not be renewed at the end of the 2016-2017 school year. It is further resolved that the records show that the reasons for this action are a result of the budget process, the district's financial situation, enrollment changes, teachers returning from leave, and program changes. It further resolved that the Board of Education direct the Secretary of the Board to send a letter to each of the individuals listed, officially notifying them that their teaching contracts will not be renewed at the end of the 2016-2017 school year, and that they will be laid off as teachers in the Livonia Public Schools School District.
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Oquist or Mr. McDonald, I'm going to jump in just for a moment, just as a point of clarification for the public. Those of us making motions are doing so for the purpose of getting that on the table for discussion. It does not necessarily designate our happiness or enthusiastic support of such motions, but that is a housekeeping item that we must take care of. Definitely. Mrs. Oquist or Mr. McDonald, I'm not sure which one of you would like to address this item.
I'll speak to this. First, I want to note the change from your initial list that you received earlier in your packet to today. The reason for that is we only need to bring the K-12 LEA teachers forward to the board. That list that you had also included shared time and LPA layoffs. At this time each year, the district must make that difficult decision whether or not to lay off any teachers. As stated earlier, we consider the current and projected budget, enrollment changes, employees returning from leave, and changes to programs when making these decisions. The determination of the teachers presented tonight for layoff is consistent with board policy and administrative procedures. The district is obligated to provide notice to the employees who will be laid off. Good at this time is that we do believe that we will be able to bring back the majority of those teachers.
Are there questions or comments from the superintendent or the board?
The only other addition we'd like to share is, thankfully, this is a much shorter list than we've seen for many, many years, as I'm sure those of you who are on the board would recognize. I know we would all believe that one name is one name too many, but we are pleased to see that list much shorter than usual in large categories of teachers where there are no layoffs at all. In specific content areas at the secondary level, there are no elementary teachers on the layoff list. And again, as Mr. McDonald shared, we are hopeful to have many of these folks returning to, if not a full-time position, at least a part-time position, and that also goes for our LPA staff and shared time staff as well. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from members of the board? Mrs. Oquist or Mr. McDonald, I know that even if we have a teacher who is teaching, say, 8/10 of a position and we have a 6/10 position, we have to lay off and then rehire that same individual for that position. Is the same true if they're going from, say, an 8/10 to a full-time position?
No, that's not necessarily. If we have additional need, we can offer a part-time teacher a full-time position.
Okay, and that would not be going through the layoff process, but even if we are...
So long as we had no other teachers in that area, say whether it's a department at the high school or if they were elementary teachers that were on layoff.
Okay.
Who were certified and qualified for that position.
Qualified, yep.
Exactly, yep. Okay. All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. Any other questions from the board? All right. Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Centers, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mr. Centers says yes. Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield?
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford?
Yes.
Mrs. Frank?
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis?
Yes.
President Burden?
Yes. The next item, we are...
Motion.
I'm
motion
sorry.
passes.
Motion passes, thank you. The next item, we are we are happy to vote on. Item 8D is, 8E is the teacher recall authorization, which we immediately do following any such vote that we need to do for layoffs. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the superintendent and authorize the superintendent or her designee to begin, as soon as circumstances permit, the recall procedure for teachers who are on layoff. Said authorization not to exceed the 2017-18 staffing guidelines.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Mrs. Oquist, would you like to address?
Thank you, President Burton, and we do like to have this item immediately following the difficult item for the board of discontinuous of teaching contracts. This authorization, if approved, would allow us to move forward with the recall process in a very expeditious manner. As you know, we will continue this process as soon as possible and continue each week throughout the summer. This allows us the ability to call back staff members immediately, issue them that notice so that they can come in and sign their letter, and we will do that throughout the summer without having to wait for a formal board meeting. However, once those teachers accept those positions, we will bring that list to the board for formal ratification. However, this allows us to move forward with that process immediately.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the members of the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Jarvis, supported by Mrs. Bonifield. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bonifield.
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burton.
Yes. Motion passes. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 9, hearing from board members. Item 9A is second reading of board policy DJEA, purchasing cards. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton.
Mrs. Frank.
Move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District accept the recommendation of the Policy Committee and adopt board policy language per the attached document for Board Policy DJEA purchasing cards.
Support.
We have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. The business office is continually reviewing our policies and procedures and looking for ways to better support our students and staff. Our preferred purchasing method is the purchase order process. We recognize that some purchases, however, are unable to run through the purchase order process, either due to a timing issue or that certain vendors do not accept purchase orders. It's with that in mind, I'm recommending the board adopt a purchasing card board policy. The purchasing card method is not meant to replace the purchase order method, but we believe by issuing purchasing cards to specific district administrators and providing administrators with very detailed guidelines, we can meet a need in our district. I appreciate the board giving me the opportunity to discuss in detail this new program at past study sessions and committee meetings. Before we roll out a purchasing card program, we're required to have a board policy in place, which is one of the reasons we bring this before you tonight for adoption.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from superintendent or members of the board? Mrs. Frank.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mrs. Smith for bringing this about. I think it's an innovative way to save some money in terms of your office and staff work, as well as an easier method for the schools, the individual buildings, to be able to purchase things that they need. And so I just think this is a great way to look at things from a new perspective. And so I think that this is just such a phenomenal program that we're offering, and just I want to thank you for your effort to be innovative and think of new ways we can do things in our district. So thank you.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from other board members? On another note, I'd like to thank you, too, for allowing us to tweak this several times and look at the administrative procedures in great detail, and frankly, more detail on the administrative procedure than the board usually gets involved in. But we had to have a great deal of security that we felt that was not only present in amongst the group that we're discussing it with, but that was written for folks who will come after us, both on cabinet and on the board. So thank you very much for taking many suggestions and tweaking this many times before it wound up at a voting meeting.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the constructive feedback.
Alrighty, any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mrs. Frank, supported by Mr. Johnson. Mr. Centers, would you please take the roll?
Mrs. Frank,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mrs. Bonnefield,
Yes.
Mrs. Bradford,
Yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden.
Yes, motion passes. The next item is item 9B, establishment of date for annual organizational meeting and first regular meeting of the 2017-2018 school year. May I have a motion, please?
President Burton,
Mr. Johnson.
move that the Board of Education of the Livonia Public Schools School District hold its annual organizational meeting at 6:45 p.m. on Monday, July 24, 2017, in the boardroom, 15125 Farmington Road, Livonia. Further, that a regular board meeting be held directly following the organizational meeting and commencing at 7 p.m.
Support.
Who's down here
We're
first?
excited about the meeting.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
And then another chorus of support. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by many board members, namely Mrs. Jarvis. Mrs. Oquist, would you like to address this item?
Thank you. I think the excitement is because the items that are involved in the organizational meetings, wait till I tell you about them. So at our organizational meeting, we will adopt bylaws for the regular meeting schedule, which we reviewed at the committee of the whole meeting. We will designate the bank depositories. We will establish the investment officer. We will appoint a staff member in charge of elections, which is always a highly coveted position, and appoint a staff member to post meeting notes. So in all seriousness, there are a number of items required by our board policy, and we always do that at our first organizational meeting. Again, that will be on Monday, July 24th. We will begin that meeting at 6:45 p.m. We will, again, review all of the board meeting schedule for the coming school year, and then we will move forward after our organizational meeting with our first official meeting of the 17-18 school year.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, we have a motion by Mr. Johnson, supported by Mrs. Jarvis. Mr. Centers, would you please take a roll?
Mrs. Jarvis. Oh, sorry. Mr. Johnson.
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Jarvis.
Yes.
It's getting late.
It's getting late. Mrs. Bonnefield.
Yep.
Mrs. Bradford.
Yes.
Mrs. Frank.
Yes.
Mr. Centers says yes. President Burden.
Yes, motion passes. The next item on our agenda this evening is item 9C, hearing from board members. As has become customary for this Board of Education, rather than having 7 of us repeat many of the same thanks and congratulations to folks who have been participating in the district in this past month and in this meeting this evening, we have instead gone to designating one board member to give those thanks and congratulations and so forth on behalf of the board. Tonight, Mr. Centers is going to take that for the Board of Education. By all means, if there are other comments that board members would like to make after that, you will certainly have the opportunity to do so. Mr. Centers.
Thank you. First, I want to start off by congratulating all the students who went through commencements this weekend. The board was there and enjoyed the proceedings quite a bit. The students acted very professionally. They were excited. They did a great job. We had several staff members out there helping. Lots of community people out there supporting the graduates. Overall, it's just great weather, great time, just a very, very positive weekend. I would also like to thank the art students from Frost for coming out. There was some really great artwork hanging behind us. A lot of work and effort went into these. As always, our art students are well prepared by our teachers, and they do a very nice job completing their work. The LPS Foundation, I think all of us on the board are very grateful for the work they do. They involve our community. They involve our staff in helping out with some district needs. And maybe most importantly, in my opinion, they involve our parents who give their students a head start for their post K-12 career. So thank you for all the work they do. Tara Hillary was a Golden Apple winner for Cooper. So obviously someone that is really dedicated, puts in a lot of work, got a great attitude. I could see why the staff there loves her so much. very deserving. Our bus drivers, that may be one of the most entertaining things at the board table all year. Obviously, they work really hard at what they're doing there and really take their driving seriously to perform at such a high level. The career interns, this is something I think we're all aware that happens, but I haven't heard a lot of experiences firsthand from students. So that was very insightful, and I could see how that process could be very helpful for students trying to kind of figure out their way in the world. So I'm excited to see 40 years and more of that going on. This is, we approved a lot of purchases and improvements for the district going forward. I'm excited for the summer for all those things to be implemented and what our schools will look like when we come back in the fall. I also want to thank our staff. End of the year is a very chaotic time. I think parents, staff, everyone knows that, especially for in the buildings where they're closing. I know people are working tremendously hard. It's a time of high anxiety for some students. They like the routine, a lot of students, and that coming to a stop for a couple months can cause some anxiety. Our staff's working really hard to help those kiddos, especially the ones making bigger transitions. Really appreciate that. And I know they're going to have great transitions and have a great school year in the fall when they get started. That is all I have. Thank you very much.
Are there any other comments from board members this evening? Along the lines of the transition, Mr. Centers, that you were speaking of, I had the opportunities to talk to someone this week in the business field. And they were really interested in what's going on with the transition. And there are some businesses that don't utilize transition and change as well as Livonia Public Schools has. And to those who have been involved in the building level and at the district level in those transitions, kudos to you, because it is so much smoother, as you said, Mr. Johnson, or Mr. Centers rather, for all that work being done. And it's nice to know that even businesses in our community are looking to LPS saying, you know what, they're doing something well, we ought to implement that in our businesses. So congratulations to you folks who have done a very, very good job with it. Are there any other comments or questions from board members this evening? Seeing none, thank you to all of you who are still hanging in there with us. We are now adjourned. Good night.